We're going to explore the shoulder blade, which is a really interesting structure, because if we look at the anatomy, it's kind of just floating there on the back of our body. And we can move the shoulder blade in two ways, as we're going to explore. We can move the shoulder blade via the arm, and we can move it via the ribcage and the spine. And this is the relationship that we want to restore between the arm and the shoulder blade, but also between the shoulder blade and the ribcage. So whenever we move our arm around, whether we reach overhead or we reach behind, that shoulder blade should, in theory, move. The reason for that is that the shoulder blade, the end of the shoulder blade, is basically our shoulder socket. From this socket that is now facing out to the side, the arm hangs down. So if I take my arm overhead here, what needs to happen at some point is that this socket starts to face up in the same direction as I'm taking my arm. This is true for any direction that you reach in. So if I reach across my body, I need this socket to actually follow the direction of my arm. Therefore, my shoulder blade needs to wrap around my body. So to start, let's actually see what the shoulders feel like. So if we take our arms, palms facing in towards each other, if we take the arms overhead, just try to get a feel for this motion, left and right. Does one feel easier than the other? Does one feel heavy? Is there, of course, any kind of pain? In which case, please don't push through it. But maybe notice also differences. So maybe you notice one arm is further away from the ear than the other arm. This might already tell you something about how the shoulder blade is or isn't moving on the back of your body. We can then, of course, also take our arms back behind into extension, and again, just to get a feel for what that is like. So we have this movement from extension to shoulder flexion. Compare left to right, one easy, one difficult. What do you notice? As in, is one arm away from the ear? Do you maybe bend your elbows as you go up? The second plane of motion is then out to the side. So palms facing forward, and just see what it feels like to take your arms overhead by your side. Again, does it feel like one is moving through air? The other one maybe feels like it's moving through honey or like a gluey substance. And then lastly, we have external and internal rotation. So we have the arms by the side, turn the palms open and out to the side. You can look at them. How far does this arm turn around? How far does this turn around? How free does that feel? Then we do the same for internal rotation here. So we're going to use the same motions now that we checked, and we see what happens in the shoulder blade. So we start in the sagittal plane, which is this plane over here. So what you're going to notice is that as you take your arm back behind you, the elbow stays straight. That shoulder blade starts to come up and over. So it kind of starts to tilt over to the front. You can compare this and feel that on both sides. And the question then is, when we take the arm out to the front, does the shoulder blade do the opposite? So rather than coming up and over, does that shoulder blade now actually slide down and back as we take the arm overhead? And if you found that one arm stays further away from your ear, for example, maybe you've noticed a difference here. That is the difference, how the shoulder blade tilts down and back. So what do we do about it? We can try to get it back. So with that awareness, try to keep your arms in this plane of motion, and allow that shoulder blade to slide down the back of your rib cage. Also, if you find you can't actually get your arms really past your ear, you are probably lacking that shoulder blade tilt and slide down the back of the rib cage. So see what it's like to use that knowledge to get it back. When we then take the arms out to the side, as I already explained, that shoulder socket should kind of start to face up to follow the arm. So with that awareness, what is it like to lift your arm like that? Does it feel a bit easier? And it will feel like the shoulder blade is swinging around on the back of your body like that. You can do this on one arm, you can do this on the other arm. When you notice any kind of restriction, just think about this idea of facing up. Does that open up your range or not? Now, in rotations with the arms by the side, we are also moving the shoulder blade into more of a protraction and retraction motion. So if you take one hand to a shoulder and you open your palm and externally rotate this arm, if you now keep turning your bicep out to the side, you should notice that at some point your shoulder blade or the socket, they start to join in and also rotate back. And the shoulder blade on the back of your body starts to come towards the spine. Likewise, in internal rotation, if you watch your bicep how it turns in, it will start to pull the shoulder forwards. And now the shoulder blade on the back will pull away from the spine. With this, if you're doing this on one arm, just double check that it is not your entire body rotating, but you really allow the shoulder blade on the back of your ribcage to slide around in your internal rotation and then to come back towards the spine in your external rotation. So that the socket here is starting to face forwards and back. So take your time and just allow this movement to happen. Allow this relationship between your arm and your shoulder blade to come back to life. You can do this on both arms. Notice differences and notice what's maybe different left to right. And what's different left to right might be more obvious if you move both arms at the same time and you try to create a mirror image. So if I have both of my arms now and I externally rotate my hands and arms, and I just pause here, I can just ask myself, is the left shoulder making a mirror image of the right and vice versa, or are there differences? What are these differences, and can you create that mirror image? So let's quickly recap this. We have a sliding up and over motion when we take our arm back. And we have the opposite motion, down and back, the further we take this arm to the front and overhead. The socket starts to face up as we take the arm out, therefore the shoulder blade slides in the same direction. And we have our protraction as we internally rotate the arm and a retraction as we externally rotate the arm. In these external and internal rotations, you might have already noticed a relationship with your spine and your rib cage. So as we internally rotate and the shoulders start to come to the front, you can feel that there is the tendency to begin to flex the spine or to kind of slouch a little bit and the chest drops. If we let the arms just hang and we drop our chest, the shoulder blades will also slide around, similar to our internal rotation here. So the arms are loose, just hanging, and we drop the chest, we go into a little slouch. You should feel how the shoulder blades separate on the back of the body and the shoulders round forwards. And likewise, when we now lift the chest, we lift the breastbone, the shoulder blades will start to come back towards each other and the chest begins to open. Similar to what happened in your external rotation here, which is how we can actually combine that to really free up the shoulder blades. There is a relationship between the arm and the shoulder blade, but there's also a relationship between the rib cage and the shoulder blade. So if we use our two moving parts, the arm and the ribcage and spine, in the kind of right combination, we can actually really make sure that the shoulder blade just falls into place. So let's try this with our rotations. When we now go into an external rotation and we feel this opening of the chest and the shoulders pull back, lift your chest and notice how much more shoulder blade movement you get. This extension motion is actually difficult for many people, and maybe you have found that this is difficult. I invite you to check out other videos on my channel. However, in a minute I will also give you another cue that might help you to free up some space and therefore to free up some motion around your shoulder blade. And when we now internally rotate, we pull the shoulder blades apart, let them just slide, and drop your chest. Feel how much more sliding and opening, how much more space you're creating in the back of your body. And this synchronization between arm and rib cage and therefore the shoulder blade, this is what will really start to give you some good movement back in that entire shoulder, upper back, chest, and even the neck. So we can explore the same now in our flexion. If again we use our flexion of our spine and the extension of our spine and we couple it with an arm motion, we can notice that as we drop the chest, the shoulder blade doesn't only come around as we just explored, there's also this up and over motion, which is what we've already noticed when we took the arm back. So if we take the arm back and we just allow our chest to fall at the same time, we will get a lot more of this sliding motion of the shoulder blade. So just feel that a few times, take the arm back, allow the chest to drop, and feel how that creates the space that the shoulder blade needs to slide up and over. You can do this on the left and right. And for our flexion, it's the opposite. So as I said earlier, if you struggle to get an arm overhead, you might not be dropping that shoulder blade down. But it's possible that the shoulder blade struggles to drop down because the rib cage is pushing it up and over. So if we combine this now, a lifting of the chest will start to drop the shoulder blade, but the flexion of your arm will also start to drop it. So if you think about the center of your breastbone here, or if you imagine you're wearing a buttoned shirt and you have a button right here, I would like you to try to lift this button up towards your nose or your chin while you now take this arm up at the same time. Does that give you a bit more motion in the shoulder blade? Do you feel how it's starting to slide down? And as a result, can you get your arm a little bit higher? So again, we lift this button up towards the chin and lift the arm up at the same time with that awareness to let the shoulder blade slide down in the back. So from the front, looks like this. We are lifting up, button to the chin, and that arm comes overhead. So of course there is a lot more to explore and more detail to zoom into, but these are basically the relationships, and you can really, if you tune in, you can really make big differences in how your shoulder and your entire upper back and neck, how they feel. So let's see what they feel like if we go back to our tests from the beginning. So we take the arms up. What do they feel like? Do you notice that they are maybe moving in a cleaner plane of motion? Do you notice the elbows bend a little bit less? Do you notice they go a bit further back behind your ear? And do you notice any changes in this test here as well. And of course, we also have the external and internal rotation. I hope that you found this useful, and I hope that you already started to see some changes in how each shoulder feels in your movement. If you didn't, rewatch the video and maybe try to force things a little bit less. Very often people try too hard, but as I said at the beginning of this class, the shoulder blade is floating on the back. Take this image to mind and think of in allowing movement to happen instead of making it happen by using more force. As I often say to my clients, if you've tried really hard, next time try soft. I hope this was useful, and of course there is a lot more detail we can look into, and maybe we do that in the future in another video.